Hey, very good morning, and welcome to EVM Media Morning Show. And this portion of the show is what we call Eagle Live. And we take a look at veterans issues as we travel around the state of Oregon. And today, we're back home in Bend, Oregon. It's kind of nice to be home after traveling for a little bit. Nice weather on the Oregon coast. It was raining a bit yesterday. And speaking of weather, there was a little bit of frost out there this morning, isn't there, Chuck?
There is. I had to scrape my windshield for the first time of the season this
Yeah,
morning.
it's rite of passage, I guess, as the change of seasons are happening here in Central Oregon. So cold weather is coming, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second. Chuck Hemingway is very active as the director of Central Oregon Veterans Outreach, otherwise known as COVO here in Central Oregon. And they do a lot for the homeless veterans, very active in helping veterans and especially homeless veterans. Chuck, it's a privilege to have you on the show this morning. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
By the way, if you have a question for Chuck, you can call us at 541-323-2882, 541-323-2882, and we'll take your calls live here on the air. So, Chuck, something pretty exciting. We were talking about this yesterday as we were booking you for the show. Specialist Eric Weaver was a soldier with the Oregon National Guard who was actually wounded in combat.
Correct.
Came over here, came back to the United States, and through a turn of events became homeless. And you've actually helped put him in a home.
We're in progress with that. We're very pleased that all the stars have aligned to allow us to put this together. Specialist Weaver was deployed with the 3rd of the 116th Armed Cav, and he returned on September the 8th to Redmond, walked through the airport terminal there, was greeted by his wife, Misty, Autumn, and their 3 little girls. And it was a little bit of a bittersweet homecoming. They were thrilled to have him back, glad that he was safe and sound, but he knew that coming up on October the 1st, they were going to be out of a place to live. They were essentially homeless at that point. She had been living in a one-bedroom place above a garage at his dad's house.
Right.
But the dad's house had been foreclosed on.
A lot of that going on these days.
Yeah. And they were all sleeping in one bed, her and the 3 little girls.
Right.
And then come October the 1st, they had to all be out of the house, including the dad. So they're camping right now. They've been over in the Newport area camping. They're coming back today, and we're going to be signing a lease later today with them that will put them in a 4-bedroom house in the Pine, and get them back to having a place of their own.
It was raining in Newport yesterday. We were in Newport, and it was raining quite a bit. So I would have hated to have been camping there on the Oregon coast.
Well, that's what happens, not just over there, but over here when you're homeless, and you just have to exist with the elements. They took it in good stride. They said, well, if we're going to have to be living in a tent or a car, we'll just go camping. And they knew that when they came back, we were going to try to have this all set up so that we could get them in the house. He's got to go back to La Grande. That's where the unit is based this Saturday for the demobilization ceremony. And then they're going to be coming back Sunday and Monday, moving into the house, and then on Wednesday down in La Pine, we're going to have a formal ribbon cutting on the house that will welcome them officially to La Pine and be we hope a great homecoming.
Great, and we plan on being there, and we'll have video reports. I don't know whether we'll have the internet capability to be able to do it live, but if we can, we will. But we would definitely have a report from there. By the way, speaking of the Oregon coast, at 8 o'clock this morning, we're going to have a tour of the Umpqua River Lighthouse, and you're going to see that. We filmed that a couple days ago, just this week while we were at the Oregon coast. We actually shot video through the light. Rather interesting, so stay tuned for that at 8 o'clock. Tomorrow at 8 o'clock, we're going to have Tom Hickman with the City of Bend, and they're going to talk about proposed water structure improvements. Multi-million-dollar price tag. A lot of people, or many people in Bend, feel that's too much money. We'll be talking to Tom about why the city feels they need to spend that much money on water structure improvement. That's tomorrow on The Pulse, which is the 8 a.m. segment of our morning show. So right now we're talking to Chuck Hemingway of Central Oregon Veterans Outreach. So Specialist Eric Weaver is going to receive the Purple Heart. He was wounded in
Well,
combat.
he's already received it.
Oh, he's already received it.
Right, and he earned the Combat Infantryman Badge. This particular unit with the Oregon Guard, percentage-wise, received the highest number of Purple Hearts that any unit in Oregon has received in recent history, and among the highest in the nation for deployed units.
So they saw a lot of action.
They were leading convoys, and so they saw a lot of IEDs and other action.
How does that feel to a returning soldier who's put his life on the line for the country, signed a blank check and payable to the United States for up to and including his life, you know, wounded in battle, and then comes back home and is homeless? I would think they wouldn't feel too happy about that, because they put their lives on the line for the country, and they come back home and the country repays them by allowing them to be homeless.
Right. And he's not just homeless, he's unemployed.
Right.
Which is not an uncommon circumstance. In fact, this particular unit, 31%, according to these statistics we were given, of these folks are unemployed when they came back. But it's that level of stress. You go from the stress of being, one, away from your family, and two, subject to hostile fire under all circumstances. And then you're still experiencing that level of stress that's within you somewhere, and then you come back and you have to deal with this other type of stressor, where you're worried about your family, you're worried about where you're going to get your next paycheck, and where your next place to live is going to be. And all of that, we're worried, will lead to some increased mental health difficulties for these returning soldiers. And that's what we're trying to do at COVO, is to set in place some preventive mechanisms so that they don't have to deal with some of the things that have come out for our Vietnam veterans and others who've gone through combat back in the first Gulf War.
Yeah. Overall, though, do you believe that we actually are treating the returning veterans better in this war than the Vietnam War?
We've learned a lot of lessons from the Vietnam War, and there has been a pretty good movement led by the Vietnam vets themselves to tell the nation at large, don't let these young soldiers go through what we went through. But it's one heck of an education process, because the new term, I don't know if you've heard this, is that we're one percenters. Or he's a one percenter.
What's a one percenter?
A one percenter means that because it's a volunteer army, only 1% of the population ever experiences what it's like to be on active duty in the military, and in particular be called away from home to serve. So 99% of the population out there just learns about it from what people like Specialist Weaver describe, and the fear is that over time, if these conflicts end in Afghanistan and Iraq, and peace returns fully, that the populace will start to forget about what the suffering was like being away from families and being in harm's way. And
it won't be front page on the media or lead story on a newscast.
No. But we want to make sure that people know that these soldiers, men and women, have done a huge service for their country that needs not to be forgotten and protected, actually, with regard to the benefits, given the current budget difficulties that the country's going through.
They're experiencing a kind of a perfect storm, in that there's less money to help veterans, yet there's more veterans to help.
Right.
And then there's a unique experience set that these veterans are dealing with. Some of them, I've heard stories of some people on their 6th deployment.
Right.
And so in the old days, World War II, Vietnam, where you served your tour of duty and then you were rotated home and somebody else took your place. These soldiers are being sent back in many cases, so they really don't know how many times they're going to be sent back. And the law of averages might catch up with you, and you might come back injured.
And it's a bit of a vicious circle, because some of these soldiers have come back, been unable to find employment back here, and to to keep their family afloat, have had to volunteer to go back for a second or third tour, just to get some income, and that's a tough circumstance to have to deal with, not just being away from your family, but not being able to find a job back where you're home and where your support is.
So this conflict, in some ways, we're charting new ground here. Our soldiers are experiencing something that no other soldier has experienced. Multiple deployments. The explosives that they're dealing with over there are IEDs, which typically can amputate a limb or cause something called TBI, traumatic brain injury. Mm-hmm. So they usually don't get killed, but they get severely injured by the loss of a limb and brain injury, which, even though you can't see the injury, is significant to the lives of these families. So these young men and women are really experiencing something we haven't gone through before.
Right. And we're trying to do our part at COVO. And I've got to say the community in Bend is hugely supportive of veterans. And we're fortunate to be in an area of the country that values its veterans. I talk to people all the time from the other side of the mountains on the east side of Oregon, the west side of Oregon, and they tell me that when they come to Bend and see what support the veterans have here, that it's incredible, and they go back to their side of Oregon and wish that they could create what we have here.
Okay, and of course you're open to giving them advice if they want to start something like Central Oregon Veterans Outreach or Coastal Veterans Outreach or Treasure Valley or whatever. Right.
Yep.
Okay. So Specialist Eric Weaver will get a home. Does he know this yet?
Oh, yes.
I hope so, because we're telling everybody.
No. He and Misty are well aware of this. She's been a huge advocate for him and for their family. When she first learned of this, of the possible availability of the house, she was at what's called a yellow ribbon event.
Okay.
And that was a pre-return from deployment event that was over at the River House. Mm-hmm. That was put on by the Oregon National Guard. And they brought together all the family members of the soldiers that had been deployed and brought them together for a day to let them know, one, the timeline of when they would be coming back, and two, the services that were going to be available for them. And we set up a table over there at that event, and she stopped by and told us about that they were going to be having to move out of the place where they were living, even though they were crammed into this one little room. And so she applied on behalf of Eric, who was still deployed, and when he got back, September the 8th, then we scheduled an interview, and he and Misty and the girls came down to the Pine and met with a representative from the Band of Brothers, Chris Riggs, who operates the community kitchen down in La Pine, mm-hmm. and then two members of our board, and they interviewed them, and among the applicants, they were selected.
There's so much need out there. We obviously are helping Eric and his family, but what about the other veterans? We can't help them all. There's a lot of jobless situations out there. There's a lot of veterans coming home. And obviously the employer wants to hold the job open for the veteran, but from the employer's standpoint, it's a lot easier to cut a position from somebody who's not there than go to somebody with a family who is currently here and cut them, hoping that the veteran will return to take the job. And in the meantime, what does the employer do? It's kind of a perfect storm for them as well.
Right.
So what are we doing for other veterans? We can't help them all, or can we?
Well, actually, COVO received a grant in August for a Department of Labor program called the Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program.
How much was the grant?
It was for $196,000. It is allowing us to set up a job training program for homeless veterans or veterans at risk of homelessness. And we've brought on board a program director, Steve Wilkes, and a person we call a resource navigator, plus a jobs training specialist. And what this program is designed to do is go out within the 3 central Oregon counties here, Deschutes, Crook, and Jefferson, and locate homeless veterans or low-income, at-risk veterans, allow them to be enrolled in job training programs, and then identify veteran-friendly employers who would be willing to take these folks on and get them hired. And it's a 1-year grant that we can get extended for 4 more years if we meet some very tough guidelines about getting people back into the workforce.
Yeah.
But we're excited that we're able to do it, and we're actively working to make veterans who are currently unemployed members of the workforce again. We've got 5 people signed up so far. We just started this in September.
Okay, so it's a brand new program.
It's brand new, but we're off and running and excited about this.
How big is the need out there? Obviously, there was a huge deployment that came back. How many are homeless? How many are jobless? How many need help?
Well, it's interesting. A year ago, in May 2010, at Vince Jenna Stadium here in Bend, I think the first of the 82nd Armored Cav came home. 350 people.
I remember that.
And of that 350, when the demobilization ceremony ended, half of them were unemployed. And then the unit that just returned that Specialist Weaver's a part of, 31% of them are unemployed. We're seeing now what I describe as the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
Some of those of the 350 who came back in May 2010, there are the tough cases. They came back, and within a couple of months, they were living outside or homeless. We're seeing, as time passes, more and more of those are the iceberg is coming up out of the water.
Yeah.
And we're seeing more and more of those as their unemployment benefits run out, and as they can't find a job. So we're seeing an increasing number of younger people coming in with who are veterans, who can't find a job, who have run out of options on being able to pay rent, and are having to live with family, live with friends, live in their car, live in motels, or come to us and get a tent.
I would think that the veteran coming home after putting his life on the line would be just a little bit angry over the situation. You know,
well,
this isn't fair.
That's not an uncommon reaction.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what often happens is you see an increased incident of domestic violence,
Yeah.
or bar fights, or some other incident where maybe they get pulled over by a policeman for a traffic ticket.
Going too fast.
And get into an argument, and then it escalates from there. And so what we're also trying to do here in Central Oregon is see if we can put together a veterans court where if a veteran comes back who's been experiencing some stressors and is reacting to maybe something that happened to him in combat, that he's not tagged with a criminal conviction or some other mark on his record that's going to keep him later on from being able to get a job or find a place to live, because if they say, hey, on your rental application you've got a criminal conviction. So we're trying to be very proactive in what we're doing to make sure that this generation of veterans is able to not have to go through what the Vietnam veterans went through.
Well, thanks for doing that. So the Veterans Court, where are we in the process of that proposal?
We've met with the district attorney, and we've had some planning sessions with that included members of the court administrator's office here in Central Oregon, and we're right now looking at some different models, because there simply is no money to fund a veterans court. And so what we're looking at is possibly setting up a process where perhaps we don't have a formal veterans court, but it can be added to the tail end of another existing court docket. There is a mental health court. There is a specialty court for family matters. There's a family drug court. So there's all these specialty courts, and if they're already in existence, perhaps our thought is we could just add a few veterans cases to the tail end of one of those existing dockets, and until we can come up with the funding to establish a formal veterans court, get it into operation that way. We've got a person who works for parole and probation named Dick Gorby, and he's a very good veterans advocate. I'd recommend him for being a guest on your program.
Okay.
But he's willing to be a what we're calling a veterans justice liaison, where if a veteran is identified who's been arrested and put in jail, we'll go and meet with him, Dick would, find out what's going on. And there's a veterans justice outreach position that's been created at the Portland VA, and that person is working with us, and she will actively intercede through the VA system to see if there's some services that can be obtained for this incarcerated veteran. She and Dick have worked together where we've learned that there's been a veteran in jail who maybe needs alcohol and drug treatment.
Right.
And so they've been able to work it out so that the fellow, upon release, could go directly into treatment, and in return doesn't wind up, they sort of suspend his case and wait to see what's going to happen if he successfully completes treatment, so that if he does, and when he comes back to this area, he might be able to get the charges dismissed or reduced, or not have to have that bad mark on his record.
Okay. Cold weather's coming up. We mentioned this is the first morning here in Bend, Oregon. We've had to scrape the ice from our windows. It was cold this morning.
Right.
And that brings to mind another problem that's going to happen, not only for veterans but for the homeless here in Central Oregon. It gets cold. If you haven't lived in Central Oregon, it gets cold here in the winter, and they usually try to get through the winter without a homeless person losing their life or losing a limb because of frostbite. We've got a lot of homeless people out there right now, a lot of homeless veterans. So again, we've maybe overusing the term perfect storm here, but we're going to have a challenge this winter, aren't we?
Right. And we thought ahead to that. Last winter was a particularly tough winter and a long winter.
Yes, it was.
And in August, we put together an event known as a Stand Down. We got a little bit of money from the Department of Labor to help us do this, and we went over to Ben's Community Center and had a whole day where we were able to meet with, we met with 65 homeless veterans, and we passed out sleeping bags, tents, warm clothing, hygiene kits, and other gear in anticipation of the upcoming winter. I think we gave out more than 30 tents, whole bunch of sleeping bags, and we have a stock of cold weather items stored in a warehouse that we're beginning to bring over to our COVO offices so that we can, as people come in seeking cold weather gear, we can pass it out to them. This past week, we've had a run on sleeping bags and tents and warm clothing and socks, particularly, that folks who've been living outside have come by our office to pick up. And our homeless outreach team that goes out every Tuesday in Central Oregon here to visit in the homeless camps, they have seen a run on the stuff that they've had, passing a lot of sleeping bags, tents, warm clothing as well, also boots. So it's winter's upon us, and I think we're prepared. We've got a pretty good supply at this point that we think we can meet the early need. What we're worried about is and we'll be seeking donations for as we get into the heavier months, long about late December or January. Probably our stocks are going to be pretty well lowered, and so if folks out there have tents and sleeping bags and warm clothing and socks and that sort of thing to donate, if they could get in touch with us and arrange to drop it off. We'd love to have it.
Do you have room now for more donations? Are you still stockpiling? Do you have enough room?
Well, we're full at our offices. We're about maxed out there with what we can store, but we have an area at Ben's Community Warehouse, Ben's Community Center's warehouse, over in the old mill area, and we have space there. So it's well, don't not think of bringing us anything because we've run out of space. No, we'll find a place to put it.
So if you want to donate it, bring it. They'll cram it in a corner somewhere.
Right.
Because about January you're going to need it.
Yes.
Okay. It's an issue that we're definitely going to be following here on the networks. On the Jesus Network, it's from 7 to 7:30, and the Veterans Network, especially Eagle Live, from 7:30 to 8 here on the networks, because we're kind of concerned, very much concerned. Another issue that we're very concerned about is the issue of suicide. Mm-hmm. Both from in the veteran standpoint. Were you aware that, and I know Chuck's aware of this, there have been some months where the U.S. military has lost more soldiers to suicide than combat. Mm-hmm. That's a sobering and staggering statistic because of the emotional trauma and the grief and so on and so forth that these soldiers are dealing with. Suicide is also an issue not only for veterans but for other people in the society that maybe have had six-figure incomes and now are living in their cars. Mm-hmm. You know, life for them in some way has ended because the life that they knew may not come back for quite a while. And so some of these people are making a very rash decision and checking out. It's an issue that we're very aware of, and we're going to be looking at all of the information that we can get out to you here on EVM Media, and I'm very concerned about it. I'm sure you are too.
Well, as a matter of fact, in mid-September, the Veterans Administration in Portland at the hospital there put together a 2-day training program on rural health care, rural mental health care in Sun River. People from all over the state came, and it was just fortuitous. At that conference, a report came out, and they announced it there that the Oregon National Guard has the highest suicide rate of any military organization in the country, and people are scratching their heads and trying to figure out why. And what it comes down to, they're initially discovering is that the soldiers are out there pocketed in rural areas where in the past there hasn't been a lot of support available, mental health support, but also it's the number of deployments that the soldiers have seen that appear to be maybe taking their toll.
Yeah.
There's going to be some further detailed study of why is it that the Oregon National Guard has such high statistics, and a lot of work that's going to be done to try and see if we can halt that. One of the things that we're doing with COVO and an organization that of local veterans organizations called the Central Oregon Veterans Council, is we've been talking with law enforcement officers, Bend, Redmond, Sheriff's Department, and the Vet Center, and the local community outpatient clinic here for the VA, to see about setting up a mentoring program. And this would be if the police or the sheriffs get a call that someone is threatening suicide and they're identified as a veteran, that there would be a roster of people who have been trained to be able to provide some assistance for people contemplating suicide who are veterans, to go to where they are and to be available to talk to them and see if they can assist the law enforcement officers in talking them down and getting them the help that they need, rather than thinking about taking their own life or harming someone else.
Yeah. So, a very serious issue there. And is there any way that the community at large can help? This is a very tragic statistic, and one that we obviously all should want to get involved in to see how we can prevent it.
Well, support our efforts for one thing,
Yeah.
to make folks aware that this is an issue, and be aware themselves of that it's not just necessarily a veterans issue or a military issue, but that just given these economic times and circumstances, there are a lot of people out there suffering, and that just for the good of society at large, learn more about what's going on, and to recognize the signs of someone who is thinking of harming themselves, and be prepared and willing to interact.
Speaking of that, Deschutes County is putting together a suicide prevention program. Suicide is one of the leading causes of death in Oregon. Early recognition of the warning signs and intervention can save lives. There is going to be free suicide prevention trainings offered in 4 locations here in Central Oregon. Tuesday, October 11th at Sisters High School in the Lecture Drama Room. Monday, October 17th at the Redmond Lynch Elementary School. Tuesday, October 18th at Bend Westside Church in the west part of Bend. And by the way, we're trying to get permission to webcast that live at the Westside Church, and we hope we can do that because we really want to get that information out there. I mentioned earlier we're going to do whatever we can to get all the information out there we can. Wednesday, October 19th at the Lapine Senior Center is another place where that is going to be. And this is being put on by Deschutes County Children and Families Commission, and the time is going to be 6 to 7 p.m. in each of those following locations. Again, Tuesday, October 11th, Sisters High School. Monday, October 17th at Redmond Lynch Elementary. Tuesday, October 18th at Bend Westside Church. Wednesday, October 19th at Lapine Senior Center. If you want more information, you can call 541-330-4632. That's 541-330-4632. And more information coming about that, especially if we can webcast this. Now, if we do webcast it and record it, it's available on our website later, and we put everything up on YouTube, so you can refer to that later for if you want to get a refresher or check back out on the information. Chuck, we've got a few minutes left. What are the things we have? There's a lot of things that COVO is interested in, and we definitely want to bring you back on a fairly regular basis to let people know what's going on. What else is on your top 10 list that we need to really touch on?
Well, we were able to get our medical van program off and running as of this past April, and it's been out close to 30 times now. We've been able to take it out pretty much once a week. We alternate between taking it either to Shepherd's House, which is a men's homeless shelter here in Bend, and then the next week to Bethlehem Inn. And then in the afternoons following the morning at either of those locations, we go out to a homeless camp. We've got 8 doctors now who are volunteering to come on board and provide services. 22 nurses and a cadre of about 6 drivers who rotate through and drive the van for us. We're in need of donations of medical supplies, funds to keep the van running with diesel fuel and other equipment. So any support we can get from the community for that is most appreciated. Or if you're a medical provider or a nurse or would be interested in driving, we'd like to get more people helping us out with this, and they can contact us at our offices to learn more about that.
I've heard stories about people that were literally saved, lives were saved. There were people that were probably within hours of having a stroke, right, that the medical van was able to intercede and get them the medical help they needed before they had a stroke.
Right, and the docs and the nurses have documented about 6 cases of that, where if they had not received assistance right then, they either would have wound up in the hospital later in the day or been dead, or would have suffered some very serious medical consequences in the next couple of days or weeks that would have put them in the hospital for a long time.
And if you look at just the dollars and cents of it, preventing something like that is a lot cheaper than the care afterwards.
Yes.
So
yes.
if you just want to look at the dollars and cents and the pragmatic, okay, where can we better spend our money. Prevention is penny wise and pound foolish. If you can prevent something from happening like that, it's a lot better than to have that veteran who is homeless in many cases hospitalized, and then everybody else has to pay the bill. So that health van really helps the veterans and also helps all of us in the long run.
It's free, and another important part of it is that they don't just come on board and see a doctor who tells them they got a problem. The doctor is able to write a prescription right there on the spot, and we have set up a system with Shopko and Walmart that the doctors can order off their $4 formularies, and so when they leave the van, they've got a prescription, and they also get a gift card, a $5 gift card that allows them to go to Shopko or Walmart and get that prescription filled. I don't know how many times we've had people who've come to the medical van and they come in and they say, well, yeah, I went to the doctor and he or she gave me a prescription, but I don't have the money to fill it.
Yeah.
And so we're able, as a result of the program that we've initiated, to take care of that. And so if anyone would like to help donate funds to help us offset the cost of those prescriptions, we're spending probably $200 a month to purchase those $5 prescription cards, and so
really?
There's a lot of people in need out there that we're able to help. And by the way, with our medical van and any of the services that we offer, it's not just for veterans. You can't go out into the woods and see somebody who's freezing and say, "Oh, are you a veteran?" "Oh, I'm not. You're not. So I'm not going to give you a sleeping bag." No. If they're in need, we're going to help them. And so our services on the medical van are for veterans and non-veterans. It's just veterans at large giving back to the community.
Okay. If people don't have money but would like to help, do you have the need for volunteers answering phones, etc.?
We do. We have an everyday need for that. We operate largely on volunteer efforts. We had two folks who help us out this week. Like, for example, yesterday, 2 people were sick. And so we were scrambling around the office trying to go back in the back and grab sleeping bags and camping gear and answer the phones and just do what you need to do to keep the office running. And we sure could have used some volunteers yesterday.
Okay. So if people want to help, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, our physical address is 117 Northwest Lafayette.
Which is a new location. You've been in that location 4 or 5 months?
Since May.
Okay.
But our phone number didn't change. The phone number is still 541-383-2793. That's 541-283-2793. And we have a website that's www.covo-us.org.
Okay. Chuck, we want to have you back again. Thanks for being with us on the show. I know you're really busy, but we really want to keep on top of what's going on with veterans here in Central Oregon and do our little part and get the information out there.
Thank you.
And also, by the way, Eagle Live goes around the state, and we've been in Ontario, Coos Bay, North Bend. We will be going to Newport. We also are looking forward to going to Salem, and when we go to Salem, we want to talk to legislators and the people in the state officials and see what's going on and how the state agencies can help. So we're looking forward to doing that as well in the months to come here on Eagle Live and the various networks we have here. So Chuck, thank you for all you do. I just want to mention that we really appreciate it. I know the veterans do. And you guys are busy. Sometimes it's really hard to get a hold of you because you got somebody in your office and 3 people waiting.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting, and we're thrilled that we're able to provide some service to the veteran community and to others who are hurting in these times here in Central Oregon. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Oh, we'd love to have you back. So if you want to really help veterans, COVO is a great organization. I've seen firsthand what they do, and please support them because they do a great job.